Hello, everyone. uh, Welcome to the April 2023 Klamath Film member meeting. We have a small but hearty crew tonight to talk to Mr. Avery. Is it Kayten? Kayten, great. Who's actually with us in person rather than usually our guests are normally on Zoom. So thank you so much for being here. A couple just super quick things as reminders, though I know John and Lori, you are already well aware. We are right in the midst of our submission window for the film festival, which will be happening September 22nd to the 24th. Oh, okay. He must have forgotten. Oh, okay. So as a reminder, June 1st is our deadline to submit films. We accept all films that have been predominantly made in Oregon or by Oregon resident filmmakers. We're the only film festival in the state that does that, showing Oregon-only films. And we have coming up in 9 days our next community film screening. This will be the second year that in celebration of Earth Day, we do a night of environmental and outdoor films. And so this will be at the Oregon Tech College Union at 6 o'clock on Saturday, April 29th. So tickets are $10 or $5 for Klamath Film members. Please come out to that if you can. And with that, normally we start these off with introductions. It takes a good 10-15 minutes to go through everyone, but we can make this real quick. Hi, Avery.
Hello, hi.
I'm Kurt Lidke. I'm the former executive director of Klamath Film. I'm now the board chair.
Okay.
You've been talking with Cassidy, who's back east right now. Otherwise, she would have been here. I worked in Hollywood for about 12 years before I came up here from Eugene originally. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a commercial drone pilot. And
what's that business up here for that?
My day job is as the videographer and photographer for Klamath Community College. So I do a lot of drone work associated with KCC. Okay. And then I also get hired from time to time working on various projects. I've worked on a few films as a drone pilot. I'm also probably the only person in Southern Oregon who owns a submarine because I also have a submersible drone. Cool. So I can do underwater as well as aerial.
What kind of drone do you have?
The main drone that I use is a Mavic Pro 2 for aerial.
That's suitable for
it's
suitable for the college, I reckon.
Yeah. It takes stabilized 4K.
4K.
Yeah. So it's got all the camera settings that I need to get a nice cinematic look. Yeah. So I can definitely use it as needed for cinema. And then my submersible also is stabilized 4K.
No, I haven't. Is that a DJ?
The aerial or the submersible? The submersible is a Fish V6. So I can pull up a picture of it for you. And then some of our other members here. John's got a mouthful of food. So Lori, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, Avery. I'm Lori. I'm a Klamath Film member, volunteer. I had been on the board. And I really like watching films. In the last few years, I've started making a couple stop motion animations.
That's a lot of fun.
It is. It's a lot of hard work as well.
A lot of patience too.
Yeah. So last year I had Squirrely Puzzling. That was a short film featuring squirrels and puzzles, completing a jigsaw puzzle nice. in the KIF. So yeah, I'm working on another one right now with some more squirrels and maybe a few jigsaw puzzle pieces in there as well.
Are these animated squirrels?
So they're actually soapstone carved squirrels.
Wow. And so do you have several versions of each squirrel to do some like keyframes, or is it more kind of a shot and talk over?
Actually, I've just been doing a music over. The faces don't change, and so
Okay.
that's maybe the one thing. I try to move them in a way that it maybe looks like they're talking, that
It
one might
doesn't,
be talking,
right.
but it really, with the music, it's just music, and so I'm allowing the person watching it to project whatever story they want onto it. Because my
Right.
current one that I'm working on, I've had a couple people watch it, and I've actually had pretty interesting backstories because they've projected different backstories, and so that like leads different conclusions of what the story is actually about. And I'm
Yes.
like, well, like whatever story you went with, does the whole story arc and the storyline make sense to you? And everybody has said yes so far. So it's been interesting because potentially the squirrels do have back history that you're bringing into the film, or potentially they don't know each other, and so sort of seeing it. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You really don't need to make many movements with the characters anyway. And if there's no dialogue, I reckon it would be hard where to make the movement. But that same principle occurs in improv comedy, where in an improv comedy troupe, they'll start out with several words given to them by the audience. And then they do what's called a herald, and they walk into the circle and they start throwing out some ideas. And then they set and they start. And they'll start doing their improv. And what I discovered, and it was such a relief, is that you don't really need to provide any backstory. In fact, the audience will fill in almost everything. And I think they have more fun as they go down their own little lane of entertainment. And they're all unified, but it's a wonderful thing about an audience, that you have to have a lot more faith in them than a lot of films seem to have.
You don't need the fill, you don't need the context, because people will fill in the gaps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If people want to watch it, they'll start making it. They want you to succeed.
Like a novel, or it's just words, no pictures, but
Right.
fill in all
Right.
pictures.
Exactly.
So
Right.
Lori's had 2 films in the film festival. Her first one was stop motion animation of building a jigsaw puzzle and then taking it apart while doing a VO of her philosophy on life, which was really kind of compelling and interesting, of compiling a jigsaw puzzle to her thoughts on life. And everyone loved it, even though she just made it with her cell phone. It was very, very kind of lo-fi, but we picked that as it had more heart than some of the high-end cinema grade things that we had submitted.
Yeah.
And then she's done kind of a whole theme with squirrels for a couple of films. But I love stop motion as an art form. I think it's beautiful. I think it's amazing. And some of the recent stop motion that's been done, like Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, I thought was incredible for this past year. But I don't have the patience for it. I could not sit down and do that.
I'm not sure I had the patience either. When I did it back in college, we had an actual film camera. So we didn't, we made the move and shot the frame and hoped for the best. So nowadays it's much more fun because you can tweak it. You get a bad frame, you can go back and fix it. This was like 26 hours in a bathroom posing a little clay figure and making him pour himself a bath.
Lori, you can probably speak to your first couple of stop motion experiences being similar, right?
Yeah, I've it's been a learning process. I definitely did it sort of on hard mode. Yeah, so that first one with the jigsaw puzzle that Kurt was mentioning, that I did the narration of sort of life philosophy. That one I didn't have a tripod. So I had put the puzzle, it had been on the table, but due to the angle and stuff, I didn't want to be stepping up onto like a chair every single time. So I put it down on the floor. So instead, I was squatting down each time to remove a piece, coming back up, taking a picture because I didn't have a tripod. And so through the whole thing, I did, like 700, no, probably 700, 800 squats over a 3-day weekend because I did it over Memorial Day weekend. And so it was like the first day it was like, oh, this isn't too bad. The second day it was like, this is getting a little painful. The third day is like, there's like tears in my eyes, but I gotta finish this.
Yeah, but Lori's thighs are totally ripped now.
Yeah.
So
It's like a double
So
glory.
yeah, so I for my next film I definitely had a tripod.
And John, can you introduce yourself, please?
Well, I still feel like I'm a new member anyways.
You've been involved for a few years.
Yeah, but I haven't made anything yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm still a newbie, but Kurt has instilled in me he's always asking that question, well, what are you doing, lately? I was like, nothing. I'm tired of the answer. So
Yeah.
but I mean, I've had a lot of things going on in, family life and everything else. So, I'm like dealing with tying up my mom's estate. Hopefully I can get done this summer. So there's
Well,
always
see,
life events getting in the way every time I want to do
Well, it
something.
depends on how ruthless you're willing to be, but
Oh, I know.
settling in a state, you can gather some awesome footage
Yes.
of real life.
Yeah, this place,
People.
the Amityville Horror House, 10 might be a part of it. I mean, like the place we have is like the first hospital in town. It was only for 1 year, but it was the first hospital.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of documentary. If you wanted to,
Oh man, I don't envy anybody watching a documentary on this thing, but I understand what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
But I would really,
it's all in the editing.
I would,
Yeah.
I agree. But I want to do a cyberpunk movie.
Okay,
Hacker cyberpunk.
like Gibson.
Yeah, like William Gibson.
William Gibson
More
was-
like Johnny Mnemonic and
Yeah,
but definitely some other good themes. And I've been really thinking about the story. And I think hopefully I've got enough material, story wise.
have you a pitch,
Not
a
yet.
2-line pitch,
Oh, a 2-line pitch.
Yeah.
It's kind
an
of,
elevator pitch?
Yeah. You have 15 seconds to tell someone.
Right.
I don't
And get
know,
them
but
hooked.
Yeah.
it's like, hackers tired of the dystopian world, try to fix it.
Okay,
And
they're the white hats.
yeah, so going white, yeah.
I was yeah. There's white hat and black hat, but there's also red hat, and I never understood
Well,
where they fell.
I don't know if there's Red Hat has always been associated with like Linux because it's Red
Is
Hat
that
Linux.
what it is?
Red Hat Linux?
Oh,
It's a
I
brand
see.
of-
Okay,
It's a
right.
brand of
It's an
Linux.
operating system.
Yeah, but I mean, usually you hear of white hat, black hat, or gray hat,
Great hat.
kind of in
Right.
between. But yeah, but this is kind of like a group of, I would say I'm still trying to decide on the age of it. First, it's like part of me feels like it's turned into like a teenage movie, but I don't know if I really want it to be because I'm afraid of the Valerian syndrome
Yeah.
versus Fifth Element. It's like if it would have been, I find it better to have adults.
Well,
a little bit
we're at a
more.
stage now where hackers are getting old.
I know.
There's an older generation. of
Yeah.
hackers.
Well, I figured that this group is gonna have to, it's not just gonna be young or,
Yeah, it'll be
it'll
like
be
a
a spread
spread,
of
right.
different people
Yeah.
at different ages because it's like anything else. You learn a lot from your elders and others that go before, trying to think that you
That-
learn it all yourself.
That's actually a really interesting concept as a potential pitch of like the war games era hacker or late 70s or early 80s.
Really
And now they're like seniors, but they're going to like come back and show the young kids how it's done in some sort of like, take like the Space Cowboys vibe that Donald Sutherland, Clint Eastwood, James Garner film of like the old retired 60s
Yeah.
astronauts end up going to the moon,
right.
and combine that with a hackers element of war games might be, I don't know, that you mentioned, I was like, that would be a really interesting film concept to kind of splice Space Cowboys and war games together. And
Yeah.
it's some sort of like, you have to have the old, like some nuclear threat is happening with like 1980s computers that are somehow still online.
And no one knows what to do.
And no one knows what to
Right?
do with
It's like,
them.
what about this? It's not responding.
Our society being so dystopian lately.
Yeah.
A lot of kids don't have a lot of hope. I mean, I've run into a lot of kids that are displaced now. They're like,
I think one of
and
your
I want
older
something to give them
heroes,
hope.
one of your older heroes might actually advise these children that things are not as horrific as they are, and actually laugh at them. Are just you could you could write some type of illustrative dialogue where it's funny, but it's also it's saying, kid, relax. They've been telling you a lot of horse shit, and that ain't gonna happen. Or if it's gonna happen, it's gonna take 100 years, whatever it is. But there is such an agenda to frighten the living daylights out of everyone, so they'll start behaving themselves and doing whatever authority says. And they're
there's always that angle.
well, but the thing is authority has become much more malignant, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Much
Look
more
at high school. I mean, it's like education system now used to be enjoyable, and now it's like a freaking freaking concentration camp.
Anyway,
at least
going off in the dark.
Oh, no, and that's actually, you mentioned documentary. I've been trying to work on a documentary for a couple of years that addresses that exact thing. My dad was a middle school teacher for 30 years at a school that was public, but ran a very experimental structure.
Right.
And to me, it was just school. I didn't know any better when I was a student at the time, but now looking back, and now that everything is so formulated with federalized standards for schools where kids are basically taught to the test. Like my girlfriend's an elementary school teacher. She it comes to blows if you mention No Child Left Behind. Like teachers will get because they feel so hamstrung and handcuffed. The school that my dad taught at was so revolutionary in its structure of allowing students to have the freedom to largely select their own classes, and different instructors were allowed to teach what they were passionate about, and hoping that if the instructor's passion, that's going to trickle down into finding students' passions, because school is so much about exposure to new things that you don't know you might be interested in. And the school ran that way for like 30 years while my dad taught there, until all of the federalized standards hit in the early 2000s. It was Roosevelt Middle School in Eugene. And so when my dad died, extraordinarily successful.
They didn't need the standards, right? I'm assuming the students were already performing fine.
So what was really fascinating about this is looking back, this one neighborhood in Eugene, Oregon, and Eugene's not a small town by any means, but it's not a huge metropolis. But the one neighborhood that this school served has had a ridiculous amount of successful artists, musicians, authors, actors, filmmakers, famous people that I grew up with, that I played soccer with, and now they're touring the world. And the rest of the city doesn't have, it's just this one portion of the town. So the schools, what Roosevelt started doing, then funneled into what the high school started doing. And so people grew up with this kind of build your own curriculum concept for decades, where if you had a passion for theater, they nurtured that and catered curriculum more towards you to explore your views as an artist, or maybe a builder if you're do more wood shop or metal shop. And there were all these opportunities that don't exist now in schools. So when my dad died about 5 years ago, we got flooded with hundreds of messages from former students, people we didn't know, that just messaged us saying, he was my favorite teacher and I love that school. And so I thought, I need to do something with this. And so I kind of put it aside. It's been on hiatus for a while, but I started making a film that was about my dad's life. And I made a short film that, well, not short, but I made a film that was basically about his life that we showed at his funeral. And then I thought I should do something more with this story, because as I talked to people, I started to realize what a unique school it was and what a unique experience it was. And so I thought I could tell a story of this public school in Oregon doing this really experimental thing that no one else had tried for decades. And the simple idea of letting teachers teach. And what that can result in, and look at all of the results of all the famous people and all the extraordinary things that came out of that generation that got to experience that today don't. It felt like there was something there. I've done all the interviews, I've done all the historic stuff. It's just sitting down and actually editing all of it together. I kind of hit a wall, but it seemed like something really fascinating to touch on that exact thing. If here's what's possible for students to discover in life if they're allowed the opportunity to pursue their passions, and if you let teachers simply teach instead of handcuffing them every single day.
But again, it all comes down to federal dollars and the authority that they're extending over everyone. They're basically giving you back your money. They're telling you what to do with it. It's like or what they've printed up. Thank you very much. Have you footage of your father aside from teaching at school.
Yeah.
So there's stuff, there's
Oh, yeah.
insertable pieces you can put in.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
plenty of content.
Thankfully, you know, he had a son who became a filmmaker and a son-in-law who went to the University of Oregon film program. And so in his later years, because we were passionate about film, he started to become, and he was a massive film buff. Like he force-fed me AMC growing up. So I feel like I've watched every old black and white movie ever made.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, why do I have to watch this now? I'm like, I love Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and you know, all these great old black and white films. So thanks, Dad, for that. But he started making his own little videos. And so my dad did, but before he died, because we were into that. And so he wanted to, you know, be a part of it and experience it for himself. So I have all this footage that he made of himself. He was a big sailor. And so there's a bunch of footage of him sailing all around Puget Sound and talking about stuff. So I'm able to pull all of that. So the video, I made a bunch of DVDs for family members for the funeral and passed all those out, and everyone loved it. I was like, man, I need to make this into something more and maybe make it more about the school, but as told through the life of my dad. So anyway, that's a huge sidetrack from why we're all here, and I apologize for that. We're here to talk about you. You've had a pretty extraordinary life in and around the film industry. You got to work on Saturday Night Live for years. You got to work in LA for years. You got to design props and set design and be production manager and
production manager now.
Well, okay. Well, all of the okay, our art director, all of the fun behind the scenes stuff of making a scene and making a setting and making props happen. And that's what we really wanted to learn about tonight, was all those little set dressings that can add up to a lot in a scene and how you even got into that. So can we kind of get the backstory of how you ended up in the film industry?
All right. Let me preface this by saying there's no justice in the world. The darlings, don't look for it. It might show up, but it's just an accident. I went to Syracuse University and I got a scholarship, which is how I escaped Missouri. And then on Thanksgiving, some people went to visit New York. And back in Missouri, I had developed an attitude about New York because the theater department had taken a tour, and this was in 83, something like that.
Okay.
And they all came back with "I love New York" t-shirts. And they're all like, oh God, they're slashing around. And my reaction, and typically, is okay, it must be crap. I don't screw New York. I don't care, because the people that are impressed by it didn't impress me. So anyway, put that down. I take the trip to New York, and I got in there and I started just walking around, and I couldn't sleep, and I could literally feel energy. And I think I attribute it to the fact that you have so many people in such a small space.
Right.
And there's so much creative energy going on that it's almost like a static electricity in the air. And so I was just gobsmacked walking around New York, and that was in 80. Oh, then all right. So I got turned on by New York. And then when I graduated, I had made a music video about condoms, which was a big issue. Condoms on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have brought one, but I don't really, it's really old media. It's
Right.
But I made a music video, Condoms on Side. I wrote the music. I made this giant penis with a condom on it to dance, and he played guitar. So I got that. And then I went to the Saturday Night Live building, which I think it's in Rockefeller Towers at the time. Yeah. And so I put my video in a package, a FedEx package, and I walked in and said, I have to deliver this to and it worked. They let me right on in. And so I took the elevator up, and then I met this woman named Ari Park, and she was this exotic Asian beauty, and she would wear these slashes across there and feathers in her ear. She was a nut. But I gave it to her, and then she called me later that day and said, all right, come on, you can be a PA.
Okay.
So a production assistant, for those that don't know, is it's like a serf, and you go and you just do whatever needs to be done. and you do it for about 12 hours, sometimes 14, and you do it for a flat rate, and it's all for your own good.
Yep.
So,
But that's where everyone starts. I mean, you learn by doing in the film industry.
It's a great place because you get a view of every department, and you can see how each game is played. Because you're kind of like a fly on the wall when you're not busy,
Right?
But yeah, and then I was with them for a while, and then I got another job with Children's Television Workshop,
Okay.
and it was for the what was the math show? Gosh, remember the show was about math and geometry. It wasn't Sesame Street.
Okay. Oh,
Square One.
Square One. Yes, yeah.
All right, Square One. So
Yeah.
I worked for Square One
Okay.
for about a year and a half in the making little props.
Mm-hmm.
And what was exciting about this is that they had a child developmental psychologist on the staff. And so we would interface with the guy. We'd show him this, and then we'd talk about, all right, what age and what developmental conceptual level are they at? So it was really kind of it was nice making pretty things, but it was even more fun knowing that these were informed by studies of developmental psychology in kids.
Right.
So that, and then I don't know, then a bunch of other stuff happened.
So what brings you to Klamath now? Have you moved here, or are you just visiting?
No,
Or
I'm thinking about retiring here.
Okay.
And
you currently on?
I'm in Venice Beach.
Oh, I lived there for a while. Yeah.
I have a nice place.
I lived right on Brooks Avenue,
Yeah.
like Fifth and Brooks, right across from that big pink church that's just off the corner there, or at least I don't know, maybe they demolished it,
I
but
think that's gone.
okay.
They tore down some other building just recently.
Okay.
Money has been flowing into there. I'm
Okay.
surrounded by wealthy children.
I moved away from LA in 2014, so it's been a while, but
Yeah. Trying to think, because there's the Church of Christ Scientists. That's on the corner.
Right.
Is that the one you're talking about?
Well, I just remember, and I know this is a huge side story, but I lived in a communal house that had like 10 roommates in this courtyard, and the church across the street was like this huge black church, and one day they were having like a big fundraiser for some kind of church trip, and they had a band out there in their choir, and all day long they were doing like parodies of popular songs at the time, but changing all the words to being about chicken and ribs, and to come get your chicken and ribs. And so we were just sitting out in the courtyard, just like talking, like, with a couple of beers like we usually do, and all day long we're just hearing things like, come get your chicken, come get your ribs, come get some salad and some potato, doing like a Destiny Child thing. And I remember one of my roommates and we had like this really big wall, so they couldn't see us. We were just kind of like hanging out. But one of our roommates stood up for a second and to like walk inside, and kind of pops up above the wall. And all of a sudden we hear over the microphone, and it was like, I mean, if it wasn't like a straight on like SNL parody thing, you'd be like, is this real life? But it's like, the classic preacher man set up,
Yeah.
and he goes, I see you. I said, come and get your chicken and ribs. And after like 2 hours of hearing this, we're like, man, I could really go for some chicken and ribs. Actually, that sounds good. So we went over there, and the person serving it up was about a 350-pound black woman who called herself Big Mama, with like maybe 4 teeth, serving up ribs, barbecue chicken, and collard greens. But it was damn good. And so I lived there for like 4 months. For the rest of the summer, like every day we'd just kind of start walking around the house randomly going, chicken and ribs, like all the time, just randomly busting that out. So sorry, but I remember it was a pink church right on the corner of Fifth and Brooks.
I was thinking it was closer to the beach, just a little further.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sorry, that was a huge aside, and I apologize.
All right. So in New York, in around 1989, I think.
Okay.
There was a big strike, and a lot of talent, and the art director that hired me decided to move to Los Angeles. And now I'm in a, you got to pay the rent in New York. And
Yep.
I decided I would take a trip to Japan. So I actually went to Japan and worked. Well, all right. In New York, I met this Japanese woman in a sushi bar that I used to go to back when I had money and sushi was reasonable. So we were talking and I said, I think I'd like to visit Japan. And she knew that I was in the business. And so she said, well, maybe you could come and you could work for my company to help as a liaison, an English speaker to the other companies we're going to work with. Now, this is a big concert production by a star of the time named Yumi. Anyway, she was big enough to where she had the lighting director that worked for McCartney and Pink Floyd.
Okay.
So there's money here. And then they had other technical companies, and the show had a lot of structural things that have to move when the stars come out and so forth. So the company that hired me was handling certain effects, and in Japan, it's proper for everyone to stand and say who they are and meet. Everyone has to know each other, and
Like business.
yeah, exactly. So we had more or less something like that. And the lighting director had a cocaine habit.
I know.
Now, and the reason I say this,
It was the 80s in New York.
because, well, cocaine, people with cocaine habits can start getting very paranoid. They can get stories in their head and talk about improv. So,
I mean, that was the basis of most SNL in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, who cares? It's funny. Well, he decided that I was a spy because the Japanese were known for stealing techniques or technology. And so he got it in his head that I was working for the Japanese to steal whatever. Who fucking knows what it was? Me, I'm not this guy. And then next thing you know, they go, Avery-san, we are so sorry. You must go for the good of the group. And that was it. I'm on the Shinkansen back to freaking Tokyo. It's like, it was amazing. It's like, what a punch in the face. So then I went in and I taught some English for a while. I worked for this corrupt Frenchman who was having English classes, but they were really just like a dating pool. And he had these old textbooks and this stuff. And then I taught, at one point I got hired as a tutor for 2 gynecologists. I'm not making this up. All right, they're 2 gynecologists and they're older women, like 50, maybe 60. One's 50, one's 60. So Japanese, right? And so I go to their hospital and there's an hour set aside for me to meet and talk with them. And so we ended up discussing the history of female issues of Japanese women and the introduction of dairy products. And we just talked about vaginas all the time. and I gave him the English equivalent. So, it was a really, my life's been very ad hoc.
Yeah. I like to say normally around here I have the most eclectic resume of anyone you'll ever meet, but I think you have me beat if you move here to Klamath. So
well,
so then so you were a PA on SNL and you had some side careers and you end up in LA and you've also done more production work out in LA, right?
So now you remember that old cartoon of Sherman?
Yeah. Peabody and Sherman from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Thistle, Trussell,
Yep.
Trestle, Trom. Time for this one. All right. So, Japan's not going to work out. So I get my ticket. I'd only been there my 6 months or something like that. So I fly to LA and the designer allows me to sleep in his house until I find a place. And I started working for him. And he's one of the first designers for MTV. So he did all the early MTV stuff, and we did MTV
logos and everything.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he did a lot of logos. He was more of he would do the sets
the set design.
Present, yeah,
yeah.
We meet for like when they're talking and
also there was was a dance thing called
Club MTV.
Club MTV.
Yep.
Right. I'm the guy that painted all those sets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The ones that had the giant gears all over everything. Yep.
Well, they had footsteps.
Yep.
All the little dance steps.
Yep.
And they're all day glow. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So I painted all those, and the thing is, all those were painted in the East Village in a room that was 8 foot by 10, and it was already filled with a lot of crap. So I had to come up with a system where each sheet of plywood would go into like those envelope
Mm-hmm.
sorting things. I'd pull one out, I could fit it on the sawhorses, paint it, get it all tits, and then put it in the next one. So they did all night, and it was high, and there was a conga drum playing. Oh, boom, boom. But it was, but again, like if this happens to you, you're having an adventure. It's great. I mean, you're being abused in a way, but if you're young and you're learning stuff and you're building up grit, then man, just count your lucky stars.
So
What became your main theme of work?
I was very good with the jigsaw. So I did a lot of lettering, like 3-dimensional lettering, painting, of course, although we had a set painter who was brilliant. This guy he was awesome, but he did a lot of the set painting, the fake marble. I can never think of the right name. There's a French name for it.
muslin.
No, it's a painting style.
Oh, okay.
They always make everything difficult anyway. So yeah, we did MTV for a long time, and then it was great because he was a major production designer, and he had his crew, and so you didn't have to look for work. You worked hard, you made some good money, and then you could be off for 4 or 5 days,
Mm-hmm.
and then here comes another job. Your crew gets back together, and off you go. So that went on for a wonderfully long time, just one thing after the other.
Cool. We should introduce Anthony over here. He came in a little bit late, but thank you for coming down. Anthony is also a filmmaker.
Hi, Anthony.
This is Avery here. You want to just tell Avery a little bit about yourself and your background too?
Currently, I'm a student at Klamath Community College.
Come closer.
Okay, I'll.
Yeah.
And at some point, can we take a break? I can get a glass
Oh,
of wine.
Oh yeah, sure. Totally. If you need to go grab something, it's totally.
A little dry. I just get a glass of water real quick.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. No problem. While Anthony's moving over.
Yeah. Thursday nights are cornhole night.
Yes. There's
So
cornhole tournament going on.
It's like there's like nobody. I'm like, well,
I do host a board game night here in this room every Monday, and it's fun, but usually not a lot of people show up because it's a Monday night, and this place is usually pretty dead. So, but yeah. So we'll give it a second for him to come back, but thank you for being here. Sorry about the confusion this morning, but I was like, why would you be calling me about Comic-Con? You must be calling me about Klamath Film, but that means in the evening, it's not in the morning. So that's why I was like, why are you calling me, Anthony?
Of course, as soon as he answers, it goes bing.
I'm just gonna get some more water.
Yep. You want to load up with a question or two, Lori, while we're waiting for Avery to get back? He obviously has a pretty interesting background.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really interested more on like the the backdrops that he painted, or like the props that he made,
Mhm.
like the what worked well, or like any helpful tidbits that he's willing to like talk about
Yeah.
around those. I'd be interested to hear more about.
Yeah, I thought that would be an interesting topic as well, of how do you go about making a prop, especially for Saturday Night Live, because the schedule is so frantic for SNL. Figure they have a show on Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday nights into Sunday morning, they party in celebration. And then Monday morning, it's frantically trying to write everything, and then build the sets in time for rehearsals. And so that schedule to put on that show every single week is just absolutely insane. I mean, he was jokingly talking about cocaine fueling things, but every documentary and every interview I've heard about SNL is that it is basically fueled by cocaine and not sleeping for 3 days, trying to write funny things and then figure out a set and all the props and everything in time for filming and rehearsals. So it gets crazy.
It's mostly the work Avery's done is set design.
Yeah, so he's done a lot of set design, making of props, doing our art direction. So a little bit different perspective in terms of the behind the scenes of all those little things in the background that can add up to a lot in a film. So
even when I'm thinking,
I'm also
it's like sets. Yeah.
hang on, let Lori had something to say.
I'm also interested how much like creativity that he had, or if he was like given a very specific and then it was like make it
Right.
make it match, or is it more like this is sort of the idea I'm going for, and then like you figure out actually how to like make it.
And welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
So Anthony here is a student at the college that I work at, and he's also a filmmaker.
Okay. The college is Oregon Tech.
Well, there's Oregon Tech in town, and then there's also Klamath Community College, and that's where I work.
Okay.
So KCC, yeah, it's on the far end of town, but KCC has a digital media design program that incorporates filmmaking into its coursework. So SOU, Southern Oregon University over in Ashland, has an amazing cinema program. So we're trying to build it where students and some of the local high schools have good film programs as well. So students can come up in the high school, learn basic filmmaking, go through the digital media design program that he's going through, and then transfer to SOU for more of a cinema focus to complete their degree. So that's kind of the goal between the schools here. Oregon Tech, they have a film club.
Yeah.
And they have one instructor who's actually one of our board members who does teach some film classes. He's been working on trying to develop a film minor as well there.
At Oregon Tech?
Mark Newport? Yeah.
Yeah, Mark Newport.
Yeah.
Wow, I'd be interested in I'd like to do that.
Yeah. So anyway, what we're really interested in when you were grabbing your drink, what we're really interested about is the set design and prop making process, especially on something like SNL, where the schedule is so ridiculously frantic, right? Like
exactly.
basically the second they're done filming,
No,
they're...
I have to
Oh,
say
sure.
that at that point, I wasn't a prop maker.
Right.
I was,
but you were a PA. You were
was
helping out.
All right. The thing was that before I went to college or anything, I was a craftsman at a place in Springfield, Missouri, where we made custom lamps, and I did a lot of caming, brass caming, and lead soldering, and custom stuff like that. And I've always been handy. So I knew how to plaster walls and so forth. So if they find out you can do something as a PA, they'll start giving that PA to whatever department wants them. Well, the art department immediately kind of swooped me up. We'll take them.
Right.
And then I was just doing minor stuff. I wasn't making props at that point.
Okay.
But I was learning, and
but you also got to see the process, though.
Yeah. Well, the thing in this is it was the film unit.
Mhm.
Now the film unit they would do the faux commercials. So they were their own set.
Mhm.
Signorelli, the guy's name was Signorelli. He was the director of it. And so they'd have their own wild stuff and their own production company. And I don't remember when John Lovitz was on it.
Mhm.
He did Beauty Bath Take Me Away.
Mhm.
Melda Marcos is being attacked, and
The commercial, the fake commercials were always my favorite part of
I know,
SNL. They were always so good.
so
Like there was, I always remember the Phil Hartman's colon blow as a Wheaties Special K mix. Then they had Schmidt's Gay Beer with Sandler and Farley.
I was gone by then.
Okay.
It was way earlier. than that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the film unit.
Chevy Chasers.
Yeah, well, it was just I think
Or
Shaggy
what was
wasn't
this?
there.
Early 80s?
late 80s.
Oh, late
I
80s.
didn't get
Okay.
there till 87, I think.
Okay, so that would have been Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Adam Sandler.
Sandler was
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that kind of late 80s or early 90s crew that hung around until about 92, 93.
Yes. Stephen Miller was there.
Oh, okay.
I remember seeing Stephen Miller. I remember walking by his office and he was just sitting there and he had this scowl.
Or do you mean Dennis Miller?
Dennis Miller. I'm sorry, Dennis.
Yeah.
It was just fun. I happened to look in and it was just like he had this absolute scowl on his face. I'll never forget it. And then Franken was in there and they'd be riffing with each other and stuff like that. But you weren't, had no business in the writer's room. So you would just be walking by and
Right.
catch something coming out the door.
I've seen a lot of documentaries making of and interviews of people that have been a part of SNL, cast members, writers, whatever, talking about just the insane schedule from essentially Saturday night filming and then the after party, and that runs right into frantic writing. Can we get all of the writing done within a day or two so that set and prop design and costume can get everything done within a day so that they can start doing rehearsals for the next show in time. I mean, there's like no breaks at all from week to week. So from your side of things, seeing the set and prop design, even like when you're getting like a day or two, right, to prep everything.
So the set dresser would get the scenes, decide what was needed, and then we would have to rent those from various prop houses. So my job would be to take a van and start hauling butt around town and picking up props. And then we had to storm overnight in a secure garage. And that's when you get into hour 14 because everyone else is in bed and you still are driving the van to the garage, which is a hell of a long way from where you live. And it's, it's like 10, 11 at night. And then they pay for cabs. But then I lived in Harlem. I lived on 125th and Morningside. That's where I lived. So I had a long way to go home from Saturday Night Live. But then in the morning, you get up early, you get the van and you get to the set and run in and start dressing, hang this, put the furniture there. And it's amazing how quickly you can get stuff done. I don't know. You have to.
Right.
How big of a crew were you?
What?
How big of a crew were you?
I'm thinking like there was again, I'm only the PA, and I think there were 2 regular union members, maybe another PA, and then the art director. So that's about it.
Okay. And for that,
you're
you're making each week there's maybe about 10 to 15 sketches throughout like the hour and a half broadcast, or 10
sketches. The film unit, I think, was only doing 1 a week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. See that they were their own thing. It's like the
right, yeah.
That was the real man.
Right, like that's what I'm thinking of is trying to put together a live hour and a half show every single week of writing the entire thing and then building the sets, costumes, and time for rehearsals before a live broadcast has to be utter insanity.
I know, and I wasn't a part of that. I was a part of another insanity.
Okay.
We had our own.
How many different sections did they have?
I think the film unit was. I think the film unit was just the one thing that was kind of apart from the main stage. And I forget, it was broad-based.
What were they building? Just kind of outside.
Do you remember all those fake commercials that they would do? And during the 80s and early 90s were kind of the heyday of them. But from the initial monologue, it would go into a fake commercial before it went into a real commercial break. And they were these hilarious parodies of products like Wheaties and beer. And I remember that. Did you do the headache test one where like you to find out whether or not you had a headache, you had to go through like 3 hours of testing with like a blood test and everything else. And then eventually says, honey, you don't have a headache. Oh, that's a relief. After having to go through like, multiple pee tests and blood tests and put everything in, so it's taking like, realistic products that are on TV and taking it to the nth degree of hilarious things. Yeah.
Unit that's doing
Yeah. Is it a real commercial or like, what am I watching?
Okay. We did one, I remember, was at the time there was a commercial for a brokerage. Merrill, I think Merrill.
Like Merrill Lynch, but
Merrill,
just-
Yeah.
right. And so, and the thing is, they had a bull walking through a China closet,
Mm-hmm.
China store. Well, they did a pit bull instead. And they had a real pit bull that was just gonna like attack somebody while it was, it was funny, but I sat on the top of a ladder the whole time. Because once if the pit bull gets going and there's a trainer with a big
Oh, yeah.
stuff all over him. And this dog would just clamp on and start trying to tear him apart. So for fuck's sake, anyway, I made sure that I wasn't going to be an accident.
Right.
But the cameraman, these guys, they're like down low,
Yep.
right next to the camera. Go, yeah.
Yeah, that is one fun, and I'm not sure if you've experienced that Anthony, but sound guys and camera operators sometimes. Like I remember I was having a conversation with a guy who worked at a audio post house in Dallas. And at the time I was a music supervisor in LA. So I was checking in with him if he needed anything for work he was doing. And he said, well, we just had a tornado come like right by the building like a couple days ago. And I was like, oh wow, did you run in the basement? I was like, no, I went to the roof to record it. Like, wait, when am I going to get sound like that again? So like giant tornadoes come almost gonna knock the building. He's like, yes,
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, if you're behind the camera, you just don't have the same proximity, the sense of proximity, and you get so involved with the frame and everything. It's like, yeah, this is fantastic.
So I know Lori wanted to ask you about prop making. It sounded like for SNL, you did a lot of prop gathering, but I'm sure you've done prop making as well.
Yeah, so when I got to LA, that's when I started making stuff. But how come we don't get to see you?
Sorry, I don't have a video or a camera for my computer.
All right.
But was there something you specifically wanted to ask about prop making, or just kind of in general how he goes about doing that?
Yeah, sort of just in general, and just like better understanding the process that you go through, and how much creativity you have versus somebody else telling you like this is exactly what you need to do, or more like this is sort of the theme or the idea, but like you figure out the rest.
Well, it's a range. I think that what makes the art department fun is that you have to solve problems quickly and within a budget and on time. So a lot of creatives, myself included, are never quite finished with anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, it could be better. And I think maybe this and that. Well, when someone says, look, we're going to roll a camera in 10 minutes. And if we didn't have that prop, we're going to be unhappy.
What were my exact words I told you 1 hour ago, Lori? In regards to when a film is finished?
When you run out of time and budget.
Yeah. And the thing is, but it's actually a relief. A lot of people will lament restrictions on their creative endeavors, parameters that maybe might limit what they could do. But the fact of the matter is those are actually positive things, because it makes you think clearly and get somewhere and finish. And the most important thing is to finish what you start. Completion is the most important thing. It's the most important thing. And it's also the resignation that it's never going to be perfect. And finally, no one's going to know. No one knows. Like, if you write a story and you realize all the stuff you didn't say and it's all cut up. Well, they don't. All they got is what they got. And they're fine with that story. So you gotta welcome limitations. To see the limitations as a positive thing. Like, it'll actually make you a better creator. Now, in terms of particular props, when we were working on Square One, they would come up with a game and they needed like a big meter that would go so far to indicate how accurate an answer was, or, something like that. So they would make a sketch of something. It was kind of cartoonish. And then we were allowed to make it real. And so I have a lot of photos. I could send you stuff later if you're interested. I'll send you some stuff that we made. But we would make a big frame, and it'd be covered with Luan, the thin plywood that was popular then. And then we'd finish it, paint it, and put on the graphics, and we'd put in like a little mechanism so the air would go wherever we wanted. And then somebody would sit in there, and then on cue, and it's really fun stuff. It's all make-believe, and you make it look cool. Like there's something called nerds. There's a term for when you're making like a sci-fi piece and you want to have it look like it's pretty complicated. Well, you paint it and you start finding these objects from everyday life. That's the other thing. If you're a prop maker, one of the things that's important, or that makes a good prop maker, is someone that sees things for what they are, as opposed to what they're supposed to be for. So that in packaging, and like a lot of packaging is really brilliant. It has this wonderful shapes, these nice domes and round stuff. Well, I would keep a big tray full of just sundry odd pieces that at some point, oh, that'll work. And you put it on there and you spray paint it silver, and bingo, you got a prop.
The perfect example of that is the very first Star Wars film, because it was actually a low budget film. And it's like the Death Star and all the spaceships were built out of just little plastic, like airplane and ship models that they would buy at a department store or a hobby shop, and just cut them up all to pieces and put them back together and it on screen, it looks amazing, but it's like a bunch of like $3 like ship models and like little airplane things that we used to buy when we were kids and try to put it together, and they turned into Star Wars. So,
and that's what's fun, Lori, is that it's really fun. You go, well, this fits here, and this looks like it might do something there, and this goes, and in your head, you're kind of thinking, you're making up your own story about the prop and how it works. And according to your story, then whatever you decide, that's what it is. Yeah, and now it depends. It really varies, because some art directors are very controlling, and they know exactly what they want. And so now then you have to be more on the craftsman side and make sure that you're matching up their specs. And so it'll go either way, where like we did the last thing I worked on, and I haven't done it for a while, is it was called Interstellar.
Oh yeah,
it was a sci-fi.
Thing. Yeah, with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. Now the guy that directed that is a famous director. I forget his name. He did Batman, I think.
Not was it Joel Schumacher or
Nolan.
Oh yeah, it was Christopher Nolan. Yes,
Christopher Nolan is very he
he's very precise in everything. Like, he only shoots on physical film,
and he knows what he wants. And so we didn't have a lot of creative leeway there, but it was still fun just figuring out how to make these things. Because the other is, again, it's a problem solving. It's okay, they've made the design, but you still have to solve the problem to produce it. And it has, in some cases, it's going to have to hold up to the weather use. You oftentimes make a hero prop, and then you make several extra props that can be used in long shots.
You need backups.
Yeah, I got a backup. That was another really fun thing, is that the hero prop, when you're doing product, let's say you're doing dog food, and what'll happen is they'll produce a label for the dog food, commercial label, but this label is a high quality, the printing is perfect. It's just tits on thing. And that's the hero. And it's like the baby Jesus. You just keep it safe until it's time. And then everything else runs, and then bring on the hero, and then bong, it sits down, and there's a camera. And then another great job in show business is called on-camera props, the hero prop guy. And you have a little kit, and you have stuff to stick things with, you have stuff to clean things with, you have something to shadow with, and yeah, I ended up building this whole kit of way cool tools, and you learn like a lot of the tricks with cameras. Like we did a beer commercial once, and in reality, we have like behind the Pilsner glass, we had like foil. We had some foil behind it, but once the camera shoots through the beer, it's just visual tricks are just fantastic.
Most food commercials, the food is not edible at all. It's like glue and paint and all kinds of things.
That's a whole nother department, right? The food stylist.
Yeah.
And we did a McDonald's once, and they actually brought in fries and cooking it. It looked edible to me, except what they'll do is they'll spray on some glycerin or whatever they need to make it
get those little water drops on there,
and you don't want to eat.
Yeah, and the poor actors that are taking a bite of this burger and suddenly acting like they just orgasmed. That's like bite number 30 of like a table of like 40 burgers laid out. Really, they want to puke at that point.
No, there's a bucket.
Yeah,
there's a bucket. You chew, and then a PA comes in the bucket.
Yeah, because otherwise you're eating like 40 burgers to get the shot just right.
Right.
Did that answer your question, Lori?
I know it's kind of rambling.
Yeah, no, that was great. No, I really appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Have you an example that you'd like to ask about?
I don't know. Is there a particular medium that you sort of like making the props out of?
Well, plastic's nice.
Cheap and easily moldable.
Yeah, if you try to find something as close to the shapes you need, and then you meld them together as best you can. But I don't know if I would. It's interesting, the medium. I never thought of it as a medium. It's more like just manipulation of objects. It's just objects and material. There's a book I would recommend. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And it's a great book. It came out, I think, in the 70s, but Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And one of the things that I've always remembered after reading that book was the narrator is traveling with his motorcycle, and he has to get some repairs made. And he's looking at the kid repairing it. And he started musing of how the kid doesn't know why he has to use a torque wrench. He doesn't know anything about the metal. He doesn't know anything other than the size of ratchet that fits the nut. And he started talking about like the essence of this one screw and the metal and the way it's going to react to torque and heat and everything else. And that one screw, the whole bike, if you lose it, the whole bike is inoperable. So everything comes down to something this small, but they don't seem to have an appreciation of the essential material they're working with. So think past what its form or supposed to be and think about the material itself and what it can do and can't do. And that, for me, that was a very satisfying way to look at prop making. I read the book before I got into props. So
the other thing about props that I've seen a lot is usually the only side that's important is the side that's facing the camera. So it's usually only half of a prop that's actually finished. If it's if it's something that people are holding, but if it's something static in the background, you only have to do one side. You don't have to do the full thing. So if you go to the other side of the camera, like, oh, that's totally hollow. The exception to that would be the Lord of the Rings films. Like totally unnecessarily so, but the Weta folks were so passionate about the project that they spent years intricately carving into every link of armor, all sorts of like text. And it's like, that's never going to get picked up on camera. Why are you doing? But they were so dedicated to the project that every last minute detail had to be like authentic to the book in some capacity.
There was the budget to indulge that.
Right.
I mean, that's really an indulgence.
Right. But that
didn't do it for free.
right. No, that's super rare. But like you see the making ofs, and you know, if you have the deluxe version, it's like 20 hours of making of stuff. And it goes so into length about all the props and the minutia of it. It's like you're never actually going to see that on camera, but all the models that they make and every last piece of armor, every sword had like its own little carvings and etchings and personality. And
Even because they know it's real instead of fake.
Well,
You know, I mean, to a degree. And
well, I mean,
I
all
remember,
all
like-
film ultimately is fantasy, but trying to create the fantasy world as realistic as possible.
remember like the movie Tron
Mm-hmm.
and that backlighting.
Well,
Affected-
Tron was all shot in black and white, and then
Right.
they hand drew it frame by frame
Some of those
as
animations were like
animators. Yeah,
50 layers thick. And
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, appreciation for the time and effort that went into that.
right,
I mean, I think that's a part of why I like it because I
Mhm.
know so much effort went into it.
right.
yeah, like you can see the hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff like stop motion, getting back to what Lori's doing is
Right.
what I love it because I know how much painstaking work goes into it. It's
Yes.
also why I don't ever want to do it.
Well, Wallace and Gromit.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
great,
Oh,
great,
good
great
God.
example. Yeah,
You're
the amount of
watching
work.
that, and at some point you go, really? It's like, how long did this take?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's this?
Or
Serious parks, I-
yeah, all the Leica Studios films made up in Portland, like Coraline and all those
I haven't
that
seen those, but
oh yeah, I mean they're fantastic. Man, they're all stop motion. The studio that in the 70s and 80s was based in Portland, they did all of like the California Raisins commercials
Oh,
and,
is that right?
stuff like that. And so yeah, and so that became Leica. And it was bought by the son of Phil Knight, the Nike CEO.
okay.
And so he turned it into Leica Studios. And for the last 10 to 12 years, they've been making stop motion full length feature films. Laika.
Is it the dog?
Yeah, it's named after the dog that was first in space. Yeah.
Movies of all time.
And so they did Coraline, they did Box Trolls, Paranorman, Missing Link, Kubo and the Two Strings. Am I missing any, Lori? I think that's most of the films they've done. They put out a new film about every 2 to 3 years.
I haven't seen one. If you would send me some links,
They're really amazing. Kubo and the Two Strings in particular, I think is, and the Wallace and Gromit stuff I love, but I think
Yeah.
Kubo and the Two Strings is the most extraordinary stop motion work that I've to where it's stop motion that looks like it's hand drawn animation with the intricate amount of like leaves flying through the air and wind blowing. The amount of work that has to be done when it's stop motion of single frame photos is insane. And these people are absolute artists. So in addition to the film festival, I also coordinate the Klamath Comic-Con.
oh
And this year, 2 of our featured speakers are going to be Leica animators.
wow.
Wow. That's coming up in mid-July. So we'll have them here to talk about what they do. They're actually going to do a puppetry workshop, and then they're going to do a light and shadow puppetry show during our Comic-Con. So that should be super fun.
Having one friend when I was going to RT that ended up going up there.
Mhm.
He was an animator. And he was working at Celtech doing 3D animation.
Mhm.
He was a Lightwave, artist. The good old new tech Lightwave
Yeah.
and stuff.
Right.
And of course, I was trying to learn from him what I could, but I could see that this was definitely a major time investment to do it. And I was trying to get my degree in, and he was kind of not getting his degree and kind of going, but you also you could see that there's a lot of talent. I mean, it's not the technical side, it's the artistic
Yeah.
side. And the sad part growing up is that so often people would say, you always thought that artists are like, it's like sports, you're never going to get a job doing that, not a real job.
Times have changed.
Oh, but of course that was before, the whole animation, everything really hit, and the web
Mhm.
and all the graphic artists and stuff. And so, I used to look at my mom, who was more artistic. She'd be doing sculptures and all kinds of things. And I always thought, that's nice, but that's just like arts and craftsy stuff you do at home. I mean, you can't have a career how can you have a career doing that?
Well,
And now I kind of regret it because maybe I should have went more art.
Well, I mean, these kids, and they're not kids anymore. Some are older, but the skill they have with digital
Oh, yeah.
creation
Yeah.
Amazing.
is
It's
just,
just,
And that's the program that Anthony is in is a combination of
Okay.
that. It's not just film classes and photography. It's also animation, graphic design, virtual reality, augmented reality, social media.
applications.
Right now I'm on Adobe.
Adobe, like, okay,
which one?
are you gonna go
Adobe.
Illustrator? Probably the whole Adobe suite.
Yeah.
I reckon. That's
Yeah.
kind of standard.
Yeah.
But then after that, are you interested in going into like Blender or some of the high-end 3D animation?
Oh, yes,
stuff?
I'm very eager for learning all the systems out there.
Blender, have you heard of Blender?
Oh, yeah, I've got
No,
that.
I'm gonna check that out.
That's the free version.
It's free and it keeps getting better
Oh,
and
yeah.
better.
It's
There,
like,
there's a lot of like programming talent behind Blender, and they have
One
kinematic.
moment.
Okay.
Waiting.
We're okay. The moment has passed. So,
I couldn't find there's a line in your
Oh,
Apple Music.
Siri
You can also
randomly
play a
got out.
radio station
Oh,
or
shut
ask
up.
for your music on a different app.
Siri.
Butt out, Siri, butt out.
So somehow you said the magic word that
I
activated
say-
Siri at some point.
You let the G.
Abracadabra. Oh, wait.
Did she just make a joke? God's sake? Okay.
You know, it's got to really suck to be named if your name was actually Siri today.
Oh, Siri, I said Siri.
Yeah, I actually I have a friend in New York named Siri, and it's got to be just hell where every time she's walking around, someone calls her name, everyone's phone activates. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because, well, when I was going to high school, they had Pavre. That was that old. Pavre was a text-based thing to do 3D animation before we started having graphical interfaces.
Oh, all right.
And there's books, but we're talking the 80s.
Mhm.
Right.
And of course, you can make, oh, look, the 3D ball and the
Yeah.
3D shapes and you could do stuff, but you were totally just have the mentally idea
Yeah.
of what the shape was, where it was, where it's positioned, and then you hit render and then you just,
Right.
pray that it comes out. And of course, things would come out later where people would make little interfaces. Of course, then the other bigger packages started coming. Of course, you had stuff like, SGI, their really expensive stuff.
They were like monstrously expensive.
When I worked on video games in LA, we used Maya as a 3D animator.
It's like Babylon 5 and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Like those guys, the Lightwave artists, they really liked it because it was so fast. Like you could just fly it. They said, yeah, Maya, take, if that 5 people doing what one person can do in Lightwave.
Really?
Maybe the render wasn't as good, but I mean, you can always take it, import it to somewhere else for Render Man or something else to do.
What
And-
I was thinking, the difference of the new technology, even if you're not an artist, they don't take things like that and fix it for you.
Yeah,
And improve.
and of course
Nice.
you can, and if you really want, you could just get a render farm and Reddit to get your stuff out because otherwise your computer's going to take 10 years to do it by
Yeah.
itself. But I mean, you got artists all over the place now. You can get people in Russia or other places. So if you
Right.
with the Blender stuff and
Yeah.
everything, I look at some of the videos or some of the things
Yeah.
they've done, and it's like it's
First
cinematic
rate.
quality.
It's first rate, yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
To get back to stop motion, and actually, Lori, I do have a film recommendation of something that you need to watch in particular. But this past year, there was a film that was nominated for the Academy Award. It did not win. I forget what film that this past year won Best Feature Length Animated Film. I'm sure it was a Pixar or Disney film because it always is. But there's a film that came out called Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. And it's currently available on demand on Showtime. And it's very, on the surface, it's very simplistic stop motion animation, but it's stop motion animation that seamlessly interacts with live actors. And to get that done right is extraordinarily complex. So it's like extreme work to make it look very simple, where it's basically a sentient shell that walks around an Airbnb and befriends a filmmaker in this house and talks about how all of its other shell family ended up getting packed up in a suitcase and taken away accidentally. And now it's just kind of left alone with it and its grandma. And they're trying to figure out ways to survive in this house, and people come and people go. But this filmmaker decides to make a documentary about this shell that lives in the house. And it's so wholesome and cute and adorable. And at the same time, people who have done stop motion, or at least know the intricate work it requires to do stop motion, you watch this and go, holy crap. It's like you don't see any of the jerky action. It's like seamless animation, but you know it has to be stop motion. And the entire time they're interacting in real time with actors.
Now, the thing is, I think that we've reached the stage of the technology where a lot of things can be corrected.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that there was some CG added and all that, but
there's well, the AI now. I'm seeing the kind of art that AI is creating. It's appalling. Well, say what style you like. Type in the prompt for the style and say I want this, and I want a kitty with a chainsaw, and you'll get 6.
Yep.
Kitties with chainsaws. And you want Picasso to do that? 6 Picassos.
Right.
It's visual arts they're under, what would you call it? I mean,
one of my favorite things to search for on YouTube is filmmakers who punch themes into an AI bot and have the AI write the script and then try to make the film based on what the AI wrote.
Did it really happen though? It seems like
so there's one in particular, it's called like Summer Spring or something like that, where they took every sci-fi film that they could think of and they fed it into an AI, and they got some big name actors in it. Thomas Middleditch is in it, and it's like a maybe 10-minute long film where they tried to recreate this sci-fi film exactly as the AI wrote it. And it is hilarious because the actors take it totally serious, but the dialogue is so off the wall, weird and angling, because it's, let's take every single sci-fi film you can think of and just crush it into a ball and set it in like an office setting. And that will be this sci-fi film that we just, how do we make this? I don't know. Let's just try.
how long ago was that?
That was probably about 5 years ago, 4 years ago that they made that. Yeah. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Evolving of AI is rapid.
Yeah. So I teach a summer film camp for middle school and high school. And this year in teaching them script writing, I was just going to use Chat GPT and like, okay, come up with a setting and an idea. We'll see what script they write and let's try to make it.
You can do that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I will find this real quick. I do have one question for you though. I know we're starting to run out of time, which is a shame because we're having so much fun with this conversation, but in your years of set decorating and prop making, is there ever one that stands out as like you come back and you're told you have to do this and like, I don't know, the writer was on something, just make it happen. I don't even know how. Just like, what's the weirdest, oddest request that you had to figure out now? How the hell are we going to do this?
I'm thinking.
Because there's so many examples, right? Of like, okay, you get the request like, well, let me think, how would I even do that?
Like last minute hysteria is kind of the norm. So, and actually it's also relief when time's up and they can't keep throwing more stuff at you. Well, what about this? I'm sorry, time's up.
The film is called Sunspring, by the way. Sunspring is a 9-minute long film of nothing but AI written sci-fi. So yeah, it stars Thomas Middleditch, but I'm sorry, I cut you off. You said that you just ran out of time on one.
No, I'm saying that they run out of time.
Oh, okay.
They can keep wishing till they're blue in the face, but the camera's rolling, so that it's over. But you know, I can't think of anything right now.
Anything that you tried and
like,
just couldn't make happen, or anything where it was just like hilarious, like, okay, I'll do this, just it's what you're asking for, but this is really, really stupid.
Well, that was a lot of show.
It's
This,
the whole Saturday night crew. Right?
Or maybe something that on camera looked really amazing, but you were like, yeah, that took me like 5 minutes. I just glued this to this and
Yeah.
it's done.
Well, you know, it still comes back to the children's television workshop.
Mhm.
We did stuff fast, but we solved problems really quick. And we had a lot of different cans of spray paint. And we also used to do a technique of speckling where you hold the spray head a little off so it doesn't spray properly. It starts spattering, and you can get some brilliant textures and all this stuff. You know, I wish I had a good story for you. And if you'd told me, I would have shown up with one. But
Sure. No,
I can't think
it's
of
all
one
good.
now. The thing is that I went into acting at one point. So well, I had a model shop. I started working for an ARCA. It's a entertainment firm by the Railton brothers. And the Railtons were involved in HR Puffin stuff. That's where they got they did their chops first. But Jeremy was and still is, a really popular international designer. And so they would propose various theme park buildings and so forth. And I had a whole model shop in the back where I would actually make models of all these things that were going to be ultimately made. So all of Fox, the Fox entertainment thing in Australia, that's mostly the Railtons. And I made models for that. And then, all right, so now I got a model shop, and this is also a wonderful time because it's my shop. It's just perfect. Everything's set up the way I like it. Down the alley, this is in Santa Monica on 4th Street. Down the alley was an improv comedy club, and it was free. You go in there and try it. So I started going after work, and there somebody said they'd take me on as an agent if I wanted to start auditioning for commercials. And so my life took a turn into acting. So it's been a while since I've done the
Okay. Was there any particularly fun project that comes to mind? Like, I can't believe they're paying me to make this crazy thing.
Like you got away with it.
Yeah, yeah.
This is so groovy. You know, they were all pretty great. And you know, the thing is, I kind of block out the bad ones.
Right.
I just don't remember. I know I've had some really crappy time. I've been abused and underpaid and cheated. And,
Well, that's Hollywood. I mean, that's just the reality of the industry.
I was on one like small film. Oh, actually, it was like the opening sequence for a show on Showtime. And it was about bandits and rustlers, but the opening sequence was a rattlesnake that was slithering across an old worn out table with some guns and various Western props. And the gaffer crew were these just criminals. One guy pulled a knife on me just for fun and to make his buddies laugh. And he's pointing. We're out in the middle of the desert.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, this is not, there's nothing professional about that.
Right.
But you're out with some bubbas in the middle of nowhere. And anyway, see, I remembered that one. I'll never forget. But it's, I don't know. See, it's like when we would get done with the job, we'd always have great stories to tell each other. Or we were saying, oh, you were thinking that? Yeah, I knew that too. Because a lot of times you got to keep your mouth shut while stuff's happening.
Right.
But you know, just a lot of asinine stuff that would come out of actors' mouths, and a lot of pettiness and.
Oh yeah.
But then there's always the great craft service table, and that's true. Like
Right.
on a good production, your craft service tables.
Food is the number one priority.
Yeah,
like
right.
if you
Great.
have good catering, it can make up for a terrible production.
Yes. I ate some of my best meals of my life on production. Yeah. So these caterers in Hollywood, they're first rate. It's just first rate stuff. And then on a low budget film, it's like chips.
I can tell you, I did drone work for a short film that was shot here in Klamath a year, maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And for about 4 or 5 hours of drone work and assistance, I got paid in fried chicken.
Oh,
So yeah.
did you know that going in?
No, but it was okay because I basically got what was left over from craft services.
I would bring home food from craft service.
Oh yeah.
Oh, all right. I'll tell you a story. This is when I'm still in New York, and I'm on some shoot, and they serve up this wonderful meal, and there's this great asparagus, and I'm chewing the asparagus, and all of a sudden, my tongue chases a piece across my teeth, and I bite my tongue, and I mean bite it. So I finished the day because the show must go on,
right?
But so, and I'm living in Harlem, right? So I get back, and I have to go to some doctor, and they have to pull my tongue out, and they take gauze and they pull your tongue out. You got to get a grip, and then they stitch it, and it's like
Yeah.
but it's and so I get my tongue stitched, and I had this massive migraine because I used to get bad migraines. So now I'm feverish, I'm migraining out, and I'm trying to catch a cab to Harlem.
And you can't talk.
And you don't catch a cab to Harlem. No cabbie wants to take you to Harlem. So it's just, Jesus Christ, what a cursed life. So I finally get one, and I tell him where I'm going. He goes, I don't want to go. I don't go there. And I'm going. I'm not getting out of the car. And I finally got home, crawled up to my apartment, and but those kind of things where you're alone and you're in pain and you can't even speak well, and people don't want to take you home because they don't want to go to where you live. Those are kind of stories you get.
Sure.
What's your neighborhood?
It was okay. You know, the thing about Harlem was all the adults were fine. It was just the teenagers that were just little villains. And the last thing he wanted to be was somebody that a group had to prove who was the baddest ass, because they'd each up their game, and you were the target. So God, it was. But other than that, it was just fine. It wasn't scary at all.
So we've run over time, but that just means because we're having fun. But I always like to end these meetings with giving everyone a chance to ask you the one final question or just kind of give their final thought, and then leave the floor to you for any sort of advice or final thoughts that you may have on things. So let's start with Lori. Do you have a final question for Avery or just something you want to say?
Yeah, I really enjoyed listening, Avery. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I guess my last question would be, just with how you sort of jumped around and did so many different things. I'm curious if you could give advice to a younger version of yourself, what advice that would be.
Go Union.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was too busy to go Union. I had other plans because acting was when I discovered I could make money pretending. It's the greatest job in the world. If you ever get the door open, step through it. But just know that it's just, it'll break your heart over and over again. You have to become accustomed to being rejected and just continue on. But that's not what you ask about. It's about prop making. And again, I think that it's the joy of problem solving and make believe. And so anything can be a prop if you decide it is because there's so much imagination involved in creating various props and pretending. So sharpen your craft skills and your but learn how to use tools. You know, all hand saws, jigsaws, power tools, table saw. All these things are great skills to have because it makes you more employable. And the more skills you have, the more different projects you can be applied to. So you make yourself more hireable by being multi-skilled. And you don't have to be a specialist. What you have to be is a team player, because believe me, nobody wants to deal with movie stars in the prop business. And believe me, there are some, but no one wants to work with them. You're a team player, and give credit where it's due. And then take credit when it's yours, but be proud of your work and be proud of being a member of a team that's producing a beautiful thing that will exist after you're gone.
Some of the superstars mainly come to mind are some of the horror icons, right? Like Stan Winston's shop, and did all the Aliens films and The Thing, and then like all of the zombie folks.
Yeah,
and
that's a whole nother world
Yeah.
too, that I don't know if you're interested, Lori, but the whole makeup and what is it? It's prosthetic.
Mhm.
The latex and various other materials they use to form these faces, and that's a whole nother world. Now, the people that get into that are already very talented sculptors. They're very talented sculptors, and so it's kind of a great place for, like your mom, for instance. Like, she's not going to make much of a career sculpting at home, but if she puts it in the movies, she could be.
Yeah. We have someone here in town who now works in marketing here, but she was a makeup artist in Hollywood for several years, and her specialty was working on horror films. And one thing that is genuinely fun about horror films, when you know how the sausage is made, is these things that are supposed to be scary are far and away the most fun sets you can be on, because the people behind the scenes, they're getting to make blood and guts every day, and it's like super fun. And so especially like some of the B movies, like really cheap slasher films in the 80s and 90s, like you've got the woman running away from the killer, but if you look closely, like she's got a huge smile on her face. You're like, this is awesome, this is so much fun. This is awesome. If you watch closely, you can see like some of the scariest films on camera, the people making it are having the most fun because they're getting to play with the most toys, right?
Yeah, there is a delight. I don't think I ever did a horror film.
Oh, okay.
I know people that did, but yeah, I would
Everyone
see
has their own little blood recipes,
Yeah,
and
see, blood, blood, that is one of the most tricky things. You might think, it's red and it's liquid.
right.
There's a hell of a lot of
You need to get the viscosity right on it,
there's
and
a lot too, actually making blood believable. And different blood, and there's different, I don't know, anyway. Blood.
Did that answer your question, Lori?
It did. Thank you so much.
Anthony, do you have any final thoughts or question you want to throw out there?
Yeah, simple question that I skipped. When the art director would show you the project, who directs the art director?
It would
Kinda
be
gets the
the
idea
production designer would be, if there's a production designer, then they direct the art director. But oftentimes there isn't, and the art director is taking his cues directly from the director and or the producer, because there's several muckety mucks up top, and they all have to have their 2 cents. Like when you do a commercial, a bunch of executives will be sitting in chairs watching a monitor, and they have to kind of, I think, make their 2 cents, put in their 2 cents, so they feel like they're important. Most of it is just it's formulaic. Yeah, good idea. And then they go and do whatever they want, especially if the director has to listen to these people because they're paying them, and he has to interface and be as politic as possible to get what he wants done. Because like a commercial director, he's kind of top of the heap, and he has vision, and some of them are tyrants. But yeah, there was one guy named Mike something. He was famous, but he was a real bully, and he'd be bullied to actors. He was really horrible to actors. And the story is one actor finally turned around and just said, "Fuck you." and he stopped, the director stopped. He goes, "All right, take 10."
Right.
Walks away, and he shoots basketball. He was like a maniac. He was a maniac, but he was always working. He made a hell of a lot of money. there's everyone in the world is in show business. I mean, every personality, every talent. Show business really does. It's so great. It's like all these different talents come together to create a movie. I just watched a thing on Orson Welles, It was a documentary on Orson Welles. They'll Love Me When I'm Dead. You seen it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Having lived in Hollywood for many years, and I've said this in our meetings a lot, Lori's heard me say this a bunch of times, but everyone thinks of Hollywood as being this big giant entity because of all that emerges from it. But the reality is that it's a very small, incestuous industry where everyone knows everyone. And there's all these interpersonal relationships and everyone's worked with each other. So it all comes down to relationships and who you know. And if you are both talented and reputable, then you'll get hired by others too, just through word of mouth.
Yeah. And never be intimidated by what you think you are not and what you think they are. It's almost never true. What counts is your drive and your willingness. That's what people look for. I'd rather hire someone that's driven than someone that's talented, because talent can be a pain in the ass if you have to coddle them and you have to keep, it's
totally
it's
100%.
I want a team player again. It's like, I'd rather have a team player than a star, because team players those are the ones you keep wanting to see again. And they're the ones that when you're in the pinch and you're ready to kill someone, or you think you're ready to kill someone, those are the people that you want with you, because they won't let you down. They won't say, well, I've had enough. Like, no, you got to stay. We're not done. And I'm guilty of that. I've had a few moments where I just lost it. And it's like, my God, how much more do you want from us? And we're working. Get in the union.
The hours you work are insane on set. Yeah. I say, and another saying that I throw out all the time that Lori hears me say often, John too, is the streets of Los Angeles are paved with the crushed dreams of the young and naive. Because,
and others too.
Yeah. And everyone thinks, oh, I did theater in high school and everyone said I was great. And so I'll move to Hollywood and ... famous. And the reality is I knew people that were in LA for decades trying to get that break, going to who knows how many auditions, and it never happens for them. And everyone's working a job on the side to pay the bills, and on weekends auditioning and maybe doing like some local theater, but never that ... famous never hits. Maybe they end up as an extra in background in a TV show, or they get one line or something, but
they'll get just enough
to stay hooked.
All right.
Right. To stay addicted.
There. And look, I gambled about 12 years of my life on an acting career. And I have talent, but it didn't happen. And now I'm looking to retire in Klamath.
It's interesting how many people with Hollywood experience have ended up here for whatever random reason, much more than what our population should dictate. There's a lot of people here that have had paths like you and me that somehow life just drew them here. And so that's largely what our organization is people with different creative backgrounds all coming together and sharing in our misery and fun stories of our various experiences, and then also helping others who are trying to delve into it, like Anthony here, and kind of pass along some knowledge.
The thing is that,
and I like hearing all this.
I
get to skip all of that.
You can skip it, or you know what to take serious.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I like coaching talent. I did a short gig at the Otis School of College of Design, and it was for product design. And I'd done a evening course on product design and got a certificate or whatever. But then they had me come back, and I got to look at these graduate students' product designs, first their assignments and then their solutions. And I got to actually look at each person's stuff and then like coach them. It like coaching talent is a thrill. It's a thrill. It's like, there's this kid in front of you and you see, man, he's got it. She's got it. Like, what a great idea. And then if you were a coaching a basketball player, like, this kid's a natural. Well, how can I make him better? And where can I save him time? that's a really rewarding,
Mhm.
and that's why when you said the film thing, I'm really interested in that.
Cool. Well, we can talk more afterwards. We've gone
Yeah.
way over on time, and I appreciate Lori, you continuing to hang out with us. John, do you have a final question or thought you want to share?
Well, I like how you said the having the time constraints makes you
A better artist.
It does. I remember one time I was, because like I say, I'm more on the music side, and I was looking at the guy who did the music for Babylon 5. He
Mhm.
used to be in Tangerine Dream, and I just can't think of his name off the cuff. But he had said one time how he really liked having deadlines because it helps him be,
Yeah.
because if things are so open, then you don't get things done. But if you have a deadline, you get things done.
Right.
And part of me was like, it just at the time it just kind of blew me away. It's like, you mean you don't want more time to do it? It's just like, okay. But I mean, it helps you, and I've seen it in industry too. It's like a lot of times people, companies just make up deadlines. Oh, we need to have this product by this time.
Well, they lie to you.
Yeah, they don't have to.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in a way they do, because in order to stay competitive, in order to
Mhm.
get it so it's before the Christmas deadline, he's like, all the toys,
Mhm.
we got to get this
Yep.
ready, but otherwise we'll miss Christmas and then we're screwed. So, I mean, in some ways there are deadlines that do kind of mark the time of things. But in a way it's good. Anyways.
Well, a lot of artists are OC. I am. And if you're
Yeah.
OC,
Well, I think
you
there is a
need
part. Yeah.
Wait, which goes back to something that we said at the very start of this meeting was films are never done. You just run out of time or money.
So
it's pretty true. It's true.
I would, the other thing about working for some of these places that bring you, I remember going down to like SIGGRAPH one time in the 90s, I think, down in Vegas, and went to like the Disney booth, and I was just talking to these different people, and they're like, well, Disney's a really great place to have worked for.
Yes,
Because
I've heard that a lot as well.
'cause it looks good on the resume, but actually being there, not so good.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people think,
Yeah,
"Oh,
Lori's still with us.
I want to work at this certain place," and it's like,
Just keep this in mind. Whenever you're in doubt, just remember that you're good enough. It's very important that you don't allow yourself mainly, but don't allow others. You are good enough. And don't give up. Just keep going, because it's your love and your willingness to work that'll make you succeed, and it'll fill your life up. You're good enough. Everyone doesn't think they're good enough. I did. It's the thing. I don't even have a background in art. It's like, the next thing I know, I'm working at Saturday Night Live, and there's like people with portfolios and art degrees that be pulling their teeth out to get this job, and I got it. That's when I said
And
early on,
FedEx
there's no
looks way in.
justice. There's no justice.
Yeah. No, but there's a lot of truth to that. Using some mechanism to get through.
Mhm.
If you hadn't done that FedEx
can't
thing,
do that
if you
now.
hadn't done that FedEx
Right.
thing, where would you?
No,
be today?
there's tracking numbers
Yeah.
these days. And yeah.
Well, I mean,
But yeah, no, you're right, because you had to. That's the thing too. When you're young, you should be kind of stupid, or at least willing to take ridiculous
some
risk. What do you got to lose? What are they
That's
going to do? He pretended to be a delivery man. Get him.
Well, one thing I was thinking for you, Avery, is you got a lot of these knowledge and a lot of these tricks of the trade. It would be really cool if you wrote a book
Yes.
to
Yeah,
capture
it'd be
that.
really cool if I was like,
I know. I don't know what the exact thing would be,
You
but
said some good comments.
even if it's like your little cheat sheets for the
Mhm.
for the
Right.
for the focus and for the camera work,
Hmm.
if it was something like that for people, even if it was just like sheet, but it's all these nuggets
well,
collected.
I would show you my kit.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but it's like, how did this kit come to be?
Right. And then I could tell you
These
why.
paint techniques and,
Yeah.
some things that you found really neat as far as base materials, like you say, the plastics and other things.
Mhm.
I mean, but a lot of that things, it's like anything to help people that want to kind of do something, give them that huge jump start that would have taken them, so
And
much
it-
longer to
yeah.
get there.
I'm more willing to do that. The thing is that if you're if you're a team player and a likable person, people will teach you things and you will just learn. They will share with you. Like they don't hide stuff from each other. Like there's kind of a brotherhood is no longer a suitable, really politic term, but whatever you would call that, you
A mentor.
but it's more among equals. And the thing is that the best friends I ever made were those people that I worked hard with. Working hard with another person is when you really expose your essence. And if you've both gone through something that it's hard. Okay, Sonia. Well, we're running late.
Sure. Well,
Anyway.
in any final bits of advice or final thoughts before we wrap up our meeting from you, sir?
Don't count yourself out of anything. Anything, try. No, wait, don't try. Just do it.
Reminds me of Robert Rodriguez. He's like, you want to be a film director? You're a film director.
Yeah,
You're a film director.
Right.
do it.
You are now.
If you've ever put a video on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, congrats, you're a filmmaker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, but I mean, it's his idea of just,
Don't
says
be-
you don't need a degree. You don't need, if you do the work, you are that.
Yeah.
Here's the secret. Don't be afraid of being wrong. Most of the people go through life and they won't ever take a risk because they're afraid that they'll look bad and be wrong. Well, the minute you decide that you don't really care if you're wrong, because tomorrow's another day, that's a superpower. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Just do it. And if you're wrong, tomorrow's another day. Nothing's going to change. Maybe sometimes, but I think you get the point. It's like most people are so inhibited about looking like being embarrassed or, oh, I was wrong. And so they become imprisoned in their own little ego. Well, you need to have your ego to be tougher. Don't be afraid to look bad. Fuck them.
Great way to end things. So with that, Lori and everyone else, thank you for hanging out with us. Don't forget April 29th, Saturday, April 29th at the Oregon Tech Auditorium. We'll be doing our Earth Day screenings, a collection of short films based on environmental and outdoor stories. It's $10 admission, $5 for Klamath Film members. So please come out for that. More information is available on the website. It starts at 6 p.m. And then we still have about a month and a half left for film submissions for the Klamath Independent Film Festival. Festival this year will be September 22nd through the 24th. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.